Welcome back to Malden's Revolution. I'm Mark Linehan. 250 years ago today, on May 14th, 1775, the Provincial Congress begins preparing for what will become Massachusetts' first military operation of the war. It's been nearly a month since Lexington and Concord, and the colonists now in rebellion have yet to take the fight to the British. But with the siege of Boston well established, and neither side seeming ready to try to breach their opponent's lines, Massachusetts decides to attempt a dangerous and risky operation to shorten the siege by stealing food from the British Army.
The Committee of Safety resolved that all the livestock be taken from Noddle's Island, Hog Island, Snake Island, and from that part of Chelsea near the seacoast, and be driven back, and that the execution of this business be committed to the committees of correspondence and selectmen of the towns of Medford, Malden, Chelsea, and Lynn, and that they be supplied by such a number of men as they shall need from the regiment now at Medford.
Wait a minute, Mac. I've lived in Boston my whole life, and I never heard of no Noddle's Island or Hog Island.
That's because most Bostonians today know Noddle's Island and Hog Island better as East Boston.
Sounds like it's time for fun with maps.
Now, while we are still going to use our beautiful map that we got from the City of Malden's manager of GIS and database operations, Steve Fama, we're going to need to add another layer of context because the landscape of Boston has changed dramatically over the past 250 years. So much of the Boston Harbor area, including much of the city itself, is actually landfill. Now, the city of Boston, which was originally just this piece of land right here, this was originally a peninsula called Shawmut. That was the name given to it by the Massachusetts tribe. And Shawmut is Algonquin for land of the living water. So there were freshwater springs on this peninsula that was located right here. Now, Shawmut Peninsula is only a little bit more than 1 square mile. So in 1775, Boston was the third most populous city in North America, and it was located on a piece of land the size of Central Park in Manhattan. It was just this little piece of land right here. But beginning around 1807 and continuing until 1956, the water around Boston was filled in to create new land. So much of this area was filled in over the span of about 150 years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this plastic sheet and I'm going to put it down over our Boston area, and I'm going to color in the land that used to be water to give you a sense of just how much Boston has changed. So everything that you're looking at right now that's in purple is actually fake land that has been filled in that was originally water. So there's this tiny strip of land right down here. This is Washington Street that cuts down right through here. Washington Street was the only way in and out of Boston. It was often referred to as the Boston Neck. Charlestown had a neck as well, right about here. So here's the Alfred Street Bridge that we talked about before that replaced the penny ferry that got you from Malden to Charlestown. Right about here was another very narrow, thin strip of land. So Charlestown was a peninsula, Boston was a peninsula. Now, the other part that I haven't labeled yet on this map that was water is everything right about here. This right here is the Back Bay. All of this was water as well. So Boston really is this isolated little peninsula, only connected by a very narrow, thin strip of land down to Roxbury, and then Dorchester. That was the only way they were connected down here. But all of this is open sea. All of this is harbor right through here. Now, Logan Airport, this is Logan Airport right here. This didn't exist at all. This is all landfill right here. Over here is where we did our opening sequence today. This is Shirley Point right over here, And this is Deer Island. So now it's connected by a causeway. This is where we filmed this morning. There's a little road that comes down here now, but there used to be a whole separate island. But the South End and South Boston are fake. Logan Airport is fake. Much of this region between Charlestown and Cambridge is fake. This little seaport north of Charlestown is fake. Much of the Boston Harbor area is fake land. So these two islands right here, this right here was Noddle's Island. This part of East Boston was Noddle's Island. And up here, which is now called Orient Heights, this was Hog Island. So these were two of the big primary livestock islands in Boston Harbor, right next to Chelsea and Malden, right above the town of Boston. When the Puritans first started settling here in the late 1620s, they immediately identified the harbor islands as ideal locations where to keep sheep. Why? Simple. No predators. Wolves can't get to the livestock, and the livestock can't run off. And the Provincial Congress has now decided that Malden, Chelsea, Medford, and Lynn should take on the task of crossing the harbor under the guns of Admiral Graves, stealing an entire city's food supply, and making it back home in one piece. But what Massachusetts is asking of Malden and its neighbors isn't just to plan and execute a military operation involving multiple towns, but multiple colonies. The regiment now at Medford, referenced by the Committee of Safety in their resolve, was not actually a Massachusetts regiment. Men and women from all over New England reacted to the news of Lexington and Concord the same way that Malden did, immediately packing up whatever weapons and provisions they could and heading towards danger. By the way, one of the first companies of militia from outside Massachusetts to arrive was a company from Connecticut under the command of a dashing captain named Benedict Arnold. He's not getting a Patriot profile. One of the other men who responded to the Lexington alarm was Colonel John Stark of New Hampshire. Colonel John Stark was a veteran of the French and Indian War as an officer with the legendary Rogers Rangers. Stark was such a charismatic leader that when 4 days after the battle he heard what had happened at Lexington and Concord, he immediately headed south and recruited a regiment as he went. And by the time he reached Medford, he had nearly 600 men under his command. Now, what's interesting about this resolve is that it says that the regiment from Medford will supply men, but no one in the militias of Chelsea, Lynn, or Malden outranks Colonel Stark. So any operation would have to involve New Hampshire being either in command or at least in senior leadership. This represents a remarkable display of regional cooperation only a month into the war. The Second Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia just 4 days ago, but already in Massachusetts, a national unity is forming over a year before Congress declares us to be an independent nation. But authorizing an operation is much different than executing one. How will the militias of a few New England towns evade the guns of the British Navy? Will long-held rivalries between England's colonies sabotage their efforts and lead to their destruction? How many men will Malden lose? See you soon.